Today we're going to look at the disciples who may have had an inkling. What I mean, I'm going to read to you just a little bit, just before Jesus was crucified, or before he was betrayed in the garden. And we know who the betrayer was. Comment if you know who the betrayer was. Just before that happened, he went into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And he took Peter, James, and John with him. I am reading, and James was his half-brother. Peter and John were his friends, like good friends. And he took them with him to the garden to pray with him. Now, I'm reading out of Luke chapter 22. Luke does not say, he just says it was the disciples that went with him. But Matthew, and I think there's another book, is maybe Mark, also say that he took the three with them, and he lists them by name. When he rose from prayer, Jesus, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping from sorrow. Now, what were they sorrowing about? Because there has to be, did they know, like Jesus obviously knew what was about to happen. And so he was praying, as some of you know, he prayed, he sweated drops of blood. But did those three disciples know? Yes, he said it many times. He said, the Son of Man is going to be crucified or arrested by the Romans, whatever, and be raised up on the cross and then die and rise again. He talked about that. He said those explicit words, but they thought it was symbolism or something like that. They just didn't get it. But what I noticed the other day, a while ago, and what was that Peter seemed to be getting it more than the rest. He might not have completely understood everything about how Jesus was going to die, but he seemed to be getting it. Like just something vague in his mind was kind of clicking. The pieces were falling into place. And Peter and John and James, they were with Jesus as much as Peter, I would say. And so were they also getting something about that this is real? Jesus is maybe not just being symbolic, but maybe he's not just someone that's going to save Israel by getting rid of the Romans, but that he actually is who he says he is, and he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And so we're going to look at some of those verses that are leading up to this. Now, all of the disciples were there for some of the events. Like I said, Peter and John and James were there for more of the events. They were present for what we would call big events. So here they are. And actually, I am only focusing on Peter because the Bible talks most about what Peter says. But John and James were there for some big events as well. So I'm wondering why they sorrowed. Keep that in mind. Why did they sorrow? My first inkling was in a verse that actually I didn't get the reference for at the moment. But I think it's the feeding of the 5,000, not the 4,000. And Peter, the disciples are like, you got a few loaves of bread and a few fish that this boy has, and you're going to somehow feed thousands of people with this. And they were actually, most of the disciples that were there, I don't know who was all there, but most of the disciples that were there were kind of sort of in a way, they were doubting Jesus for sure, like almost like beyond doubting, like they were sure he was wrong. But Peter said it a little bit different than the rest. He says, Jesus, are you seriously going to feed all of these people with that little tiny bit of food? And he goes, because that won't be enough for all of them, will it? When someone plain doesn't believe you, they don't often use the words, will they? They don't want your opinion on it because they think you're wrong or you're stupid. But Peter threw the will they in there, as in, I think he was going, Jesus, I want to believe that you can do this. I've seen you do some other things, but I want to believe, I do kind of believe that you can do this. He's like, I don't understand why or how, but I believe you can do this. And I want you to confirm for me that, yes, Peter, I can do this. Just say it one more time, and I think I can really reconcile this with my brain. I can really believe this. So that won't be enough for them, will it? Or will they be filled? Or like that question put on to the end. It was kind of like he was doubting himself. He wanted Jesus to prove him wrong by words and by actions. So Peter, in my mind, was starting to get something about the real Jesus. Going on to a different verse. Jesus walked on the water. There's different accounts of it, but one account in the Bible, in Matthew chapter 14, verse 28 to 32, says Peter was one of the disciples that was in the boat. So they're in the boat. All the disciples, whoever was there, Peter and the other disciples that were there, were in the boat, in a boat, and Jesus comes to them walking on the water. And out of whoever was there, Peter is the disciple that says, Jesus, if you want me to go, then call me out onto the water with you. That if you want me to go, almost also seemed like another test. Like, if you think that I can actually go on the water with you, aka, if you want me to go, then call me out. Just right there, I think that was a faith that was greater than the other disciples that were there had. So he gets on the water with Jesus, and he's standing on the water. And all of a sudden, he's like, you're Jesus. You're powerful, you're on the water, but it can't be real. And he starts to sink. And he sees that Jesus is still standing on the water, even though he's sinking. And he's like, save me, Jesus, save me. So Jesus reaches down his hand. And he actually physically touches Peter, pulls him up, and then they're in the boat. That's the next thing we're told, is they're back in the boat. So the other disciples that are in the boat saw this happen. It's a great big moment. They have something up already on the disciples that were not in the boat. They saw this. But, okay, this is for you. There's lots of different things we know that when you experience them, it's a whole lot different than, like a parent. Someone can say, oh, parents love you more than anyone ever can. It's just like, especially a mom. I'm sorry, dads. But especially a mom, and moms just have this natural, they will give up anything. Like dads will protect their child because that's what dads are supposed to do. Again, and it's different. I realize that you're different than the average person. You're not just protecting someone because that's what men do, and it's hardwired into men. Women are protective too, but moms is different. You're just like, that is part of me that is being ripped away. And I will do anything for that child. He experienced it. Peter didn't just see it. He experienced the power of being on the water with Jesus. And it was just like the wind is all around you, us, and especially you, Jesus. But Jesus, you're not faltering. I am. You're not. You're not faltering. You're standing there as if there's no problem. You're on dry land on a nice calm day. And it's just like, and he felt the power of when Peter was sinking, that Jesus saved him. Jesus literally, like, physically saved him. He pulled him up. He put him back in the boat. Peter felt the wind around him. He felt the water and what it would have felt like to be standing on something that does not feel, I'm sure, like the ground. I can try to imagine, but I cannot imagine what happened with Peter. Peter felt that. He had the real experience. Do you think that doesn't give you pause? And I'm going to wager that James and John were there and they felt something. They understood something more than the rest. But when Jesus says to the disciples who were with him, Peter was one of them. I don't know who was there, who else. But anyway, he said, Who do you think I am? People think that lots of things about, I might be Elijah, come back from the dead, whatever. But who do you say I am? I know who you are. You're Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Peter was starting to get that Jesus wasn't this mercenary that was coming, like some other people thought. How could you not start to put two and two together? I think Peter was really putting two and two together, especially at this moment. Later, Jesus says to him, I'm going to die. He tells them all, whoever's all there, I'm going to die. He said it a couple different times. But this one instance, Peter's like, no way, I'm not going to let that happen. No, don't say such stupid things, Jesus. Don't say bad things about you, because then they might really happen. You don't say, I don't want you to, that there's no way I will let you die if you don't actually think someone is going to die or has the chance to actually die. That when Jesus said he was going to die, at the very least, that he thought he was going to die. Peter knew something was up, that it wasn't just symbolism, it was getting real. Now, this is when I talk about James and John as well. But why were they sorrowing? What were they sad about? Well, just one example. Okay, Jesus chose them to go with him out of all the disciples. He chose just those three to go with him when he was transfigured. If any of you don't know what that is, look it up in the Bible. And so he goes up on the mountain with them. And so obviously, even though the Bible doesn't talk about those two, like they talk about Peter and what he all did, he's impulsive and stuff, he's got a bigger personality maybe. Even though the Bible doesn't talk about them as much, he's chosen them to go. He trusted them. He valued them their friendship. He didn't value them, like I said before, more, but he valued their friendship. Or maybe he, maybe not even valued, but he kind of trusted. He knew where they stood. He knew their hearts. He knew that their hearts were like with him. And so he chose them for this transfiguration, those three, and they go up and they see the transfiguration. They saw two guys come down from heaven, and Jesus look like them, all white and shining and brilliant and everything. This isn't something that happens in everyday life, in real life. It just doesn't happen. And they see that happen. So all three of them are like, there's something about him. John and James, I think just as much as Peter, knew Jesus is not just an ordinary person. So back to the garden, that's why they were sorrowing. They were getting it. How does that apply to you? We could go into why Jesus chose them. It's fun to be part of someone's inner circle. Being part of someone's life, knowing they like you best. They choose you, maybe a spouse, whatever, maybe a kid, maybe a friend. I had a friend like that one time. Her name is Danielle, and just the fact that she chose to be with me more than she chose to be with other people, it was just like this. I would have done anything for Danielle, and not just because she chose me, and there was something about her. And they had something that they saw in Jesus, and it made them love him even more. As weird as that sounds, they didn't just love him for what they saw, but they loved him, so then they loved Jesus more, and then loving Jesus more made them love him more. And then loving them more, it just made them feel better about themselves. And they felt chosen. So them choosing made them feel more chosen and made them feel like they wanted to choose him more. When you choose Jesus, that's what's going to happen to you. When you choose Jesus, it's something, you will get something about Jesus. He's not just a flat figure. He's 3D. He's not someone that he's vertical. When you get vertical and not the horizontal, it makes you a better person, and it makes you a happier person, and it gives you the joy of the Lord, and it brings you into this atmosphere where you're part of I'm not saying you are, but in a way, like, you see the world differently. And that makes you happy too. You have forgiveness and peace that you wouldn't have otherwise, because you've chosen to be part of Jesus' inner circle. As much as a person on earth today can be part of Jesus' inner circle, do you want to have the relationship with Jesus that when things when the world is attacking Jesus and attacking you as well, but attacking Jesus, that you're sorrowing because you get it, but you have to choose him and take a leap of faith so you can get it. You'd think you would get it first and then take the leap of faith. But Peter took a leap of faith and then he got it. James and John probably took a leap of faith and then they got it. And they got it. And things got better for them. And better for them, not physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually. Better for them and better from them. If you want that, then you have to take the leap of faith and you have to choose. We can choose, and you will be glorified when you glorify God. When you realize that Jesus, everything about Jesus is true, that he did die for you. And that if you do choose him, you get to spend eternity with him, starting now, starting from the moment, not just like when you die or something, but starting now. Right now, it's harder. There's more faith involved. There's less sight involved. We're not with Jesus. We're not with God. But when you choose him, you get closer to him. And then by getting closer to him, it makes you closer and closer. And it's just like it builds on each other. It's compounding. And it's a feeling that you will never have without choosing Jesus. So choose Jesus. That's how it applies to you.